and another one done. So this month we read The Music of Christendom by Susan Treacy, a history. And I must admit, I was a little disappointed. Overall, it was okay. Like I said, it is a history of music. She starts from Gregorian chant all the way up to 20th century music, mainly classical music. And her whole premise, at least in the beginning, is that all of modern music today has been influenced by Gregorian chant. That was the root of all music, at least modern music as we know it today. She goes through different types of music, different pieces of music, different composers, many of whom you might know, like Beethoven, Handel, Mozart, etc., and goes through their history, pieces of music that they created, whether it be a mass or a fugue, usually very well-known pieces, and she talks about how their history, how that piece of music came about, as well as the short biography of the composer. So that's what it is. It is an introduction to music, but I was a little disappointed because I really like the part about Gregorian chant. It's very interesting, and it has this, for me, the title, The Music of Christendom. I thought she would really hone in on that, really focus on the music of Christendom, but more than halfway through, a little bit more than halfway through, she kind of goes into a general history of music. Also, a lot of the time, she'll present a piece of music, and she'll talk about the history, she'll talk about the composer, etc. But she'll also make it a little too technical. At least I think it's too technical for a beginner. Like, if you've never heard this piece of music before, and then she starts talking about...
Now, trumpets in timpani, trumpets in D.
No.
Listen to me.
I don't understand.
Listen. Trumpets in D, tonic and dominant, first and third beats. It goes with the harmony.
She starts talking in technical terms, and if you've never heard the piece of music before, it almost just seems abstract. And I will give some examples. She does put out the terms in the beginning. She does lay it out for you so that you have an understanding, at least some music terminology. But I find that when it's describing a piece of music you've never heard, it's kind of hard to hear or to even understand what she means. I suggest while you are reading this, if you do decide to read it, to have your computer or your phone with you so that you can look up the pieces of music, so that when she does describe the pieces of music, you can kind of hear it. Hello, it's December. I can't believe we're at the end of the year. Okay, so if you'd like to join me, this month we are reading The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. It is the first time I'm reading any Tolkien. I know, please don't hate me. But yeah, I've had a difficulty when it comes to fantasy, but many people told me that, of course, Tolkien is great. So if you'd like to join me, I'd love to have you. In the description, you can find the link to the Telegram group that you can join, where we share different thoughts, insights, favorite passages, what we think about the book, and at the end of the month, we get together to talk about the book. I'm preparing next year's list, so I'll be putting that out very soon. So I'd love to have you. It's an ongoing book club, so if you'd like to join, please do. And with that, let's get back to the book review. So here's what I mean. I'll give you other examples, but this is one example, I think, because most people know Beethoven's Symphony number 5.
Je vous en prie, recontez-les calmement.
Pom, 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 pom. Pom, 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 pom. Vite!
When, for example, the motive's rhythm, short, 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 long, short, 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 long,
Pom, 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 pom.
short, 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 long, is likewise famous and is present through the symphony. The overall key of the symphony is C minor, though with A flat major in the second movement. But Beethoven turns the tables by having the fourth movement, the finale, in C major. You can kind of get it because you hear it, you know it. But if you don't know it, it's kind of hard to follow along if you've never heard it before. Or like this example, there's Mozart's Figaro, I think, Yeah, Figaro. Mozart tightens and relaxes the drama's pace through his planned progression of keys: E flat, B flat, G, C, F, B flat, E flat, and also the use of different tempos, meters, and melodic types. This finale truly closes in an uproar. If you've never heard the piece of music before, and this is your introduction to music, and you're not familiar with like ritornello, even though she repeats it several times, and you know, it goes in E major and it goes to B major, it means nothing to you. It means nothing to you. You know, when you go to a group of people and this group of people is talking about something, you know, they're so into it, they kind of nerd out. There's like all this information that you don't know. You have no idea what they're talking about, but they're so passionate about it. That's what it feels like. I feel like you kind of have to have a pretty good knowledge of music already to be able to really appreciate what she is saying when she does go technical. From a beginner standpoint, I don't think those passages are not enjoyable. Sometimes it just feels like a textbook. That's another thing. I found that when she's describing people's lives, biographies, sometimes it's like I open the textbook, like in high school or in middle school, and you know, they have this little blurb about this composer or whatever. That's what I feel like it can read. I know it's probably such a hard hard project to put this together, to have a history of music and have it less, you know, like have it a 230 something page book about music. But I think the execution could have been better. I'm sure that Susan Treacy is so good in the flesh. I do prefer when she talks about the history of the pieces or the stories behind the pieces. So for example, Schubert's Erkling. I really love that piece of music. I already knew the story behind it, but the way she describes it, I think, is more of what I believe a beginner who's never heard this piece of music needs to know. Schubert set Goethe's poem Erkling, or Erlkönig, which has its roots in Scandinavian legend. In Goethe's rendering of the legend, the Erkling, or Elf King, is a malevolent sprite who preys upon children and lures them into his domain of death. Late one night, a man is riding his horse through the forest, his young son sitting behind him and clasping his neck. The boy calls to his father that he sees the Erkling, but the father dismisses his son with naturalistic explanations for what the boy sees. A streak of mist, the wind sighing through dead leaves, old willows shimmering so gray. The Erkling's cajoling eventually turns into nastiness. The boy becomes more insistent. Finally, the father believes him and rides like the wind to the Hof, the courtyard of an inn. Alas, his son is already dead when they arrive. That kind of description of the pieces of music I think is great, because it's kind of like, I remember going to museums when I was a kid and seeing paintings and not being able to read the painting, not being able to understand the context of the painting. I get that Erkling is from a text, from a poem by Goethe, but I think you know what I mean. And you know, if you don't know the history or you don't know certain culture, you can't really grasp it. You can like it, right? Just like when you hear a piece of music for the first time, you might like it, you might not like it, but you don't necessarily understand the whole story. And so that's what I think she should have focused on, because I found that it was a little bit everywhere. Here's the history of the piece of music, here's the history of the composer, here is the piece of music, what it means, and here is you know, what's happening in the music. You know, each part, yeah, is nice, but I think that, you know, the history or the story behind the pieces, I think, is the most interesting, at least from a beginner standpoint. Everything else is just a little too much. I think this would be great if you are really getting into music. So that's the good part. She does that a few times, just like with the Erkling by Schubert. It is just her writing style, I think, that I didn't quite like, or just the execution, how she brought it. Because like in the beginning, it's very much about the music of Christendom, and then it just kind of spreads out to general history of music. Yeah, that part about being too technical sometimes I think would be off-putting to many people. I mean, but maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure her lectures live are great, and her passion for music live is probably better than the way she wrote it. I mean, this, like I said, is probably so difficult to write a whole history of music in less than 300 pages. Like that's crazy. That's hard. But I think she could have done it in a better way. It's doable because I've read Christopher Dawson's medieval history book, and that's a lot. It's a lot of history, but it's a very, very small book. But it was a very lovely read. Like I never felt like it slowed down. Whereas this, I would read, get interested, and then just kind of, lose interest. It was the same with the last book we read the month before, The Crisis of Civilization by Hilaire Belloc. There was a lot of history in that, and it was a 200-page book, but I absolutely loved it. It was well written, very engaging. Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, those are my thoughts on the book. It's not all bad. I learned a lot of things about music. There were certain parts I really, really liked. But overall, it was okay. This is the first time after 3 years of doing this book club thing that I was actually disappointed in a book. So, I mean, I guess that had to happen. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know if you want to read it, if you love music as well, what's your favorite piece, and I shall see you in the next one. The Hobbit, we're at the end of the year.